Only in Kentucky could one county include a piece of Kentucky that you can only reach by way of Tennessee or Missouri, and a border town that built its identity entirely on bananas. Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm learning a little bit more about Kentucky, one county at a time, all 120 of them. And today, I'm talking about Fulton County. If you haven't already, I do hope that you check out the other counties I've covered. They're all listed in the playlist on my profile. If I haven't covered a specific county yet, I promise I'll get to it eventually. I'm going in mostly alphabetical order, and if you see that I've skipped one, it probably means I'm just saving it for the end or sometime later because it'll need multiple parts. And as always, if I miss something, because I only have 10 minutes to talk, feel free to either correct me in the comments or add to it in the comments so we can all learn together. Also, yes, I regularly mispronounce names because oftentimes I'm just reading them and not hearing them for the first time. So anyway, Fulton County. Fulton County sits at the far western tip of Kentucky, pressed against the Mississippi River. It was formed in 1845 out of Hickman County and named for Robert Fulton, who was a steamboat innovator. From the start, Fulton County's story had been tied to water and transportation. The land itself helps explain why the map looks the way it does out there. This corner of Kentucky in particular is part of the Mississippi Embayment, a low-lying region built over time by sediments and river systems rather than mountains and ridgelines. The landscape is flatter, the horizons are wider, and the Mississippi is more than a boundary. It's really a force that has rearranged this entire region really more than once. That becomes obvious in the county's defining feature, the Kentucky Bend. The Kentucky Bend is a detached section of Fulton County that sits inside a giant horseshoe curve of the Mississippi River. It's a piece of Kentucky that is not connected by land to the rest of Kentucky at all. To reach it by road, you have to travel through Tennessee, and the practical approach often involves Missouri as well. On paper, it is Kentucky. It votes in Kentucky. It is governed as part of Fulton County in Kentucky. In daily reality, it functions kind of like an exclave. The existence of Kentucky Bend goes back to early boundary lines and the complications of surveying a state border next to a river that does not hold still. Kentucky's western boundary was tied to the Mississippi, and Tennessee's northern boundary was tied to a latitude line. Where those ideas met, a looping river, the result was a piece of land that ended up on Kentucky's side of the paperwork, even though it sits south of the main body of the state. Now, for decades, the Bend area, that was this disputed area. It was Tennessee treated as part of its own county for a time, and Kentucky held its claim. Eventually, the two states agreed to settle the line through survey work in the late 1850s. The Bend also became a place where the map created a kind of administrative oddity. Residents historically dealt with the Kentucky county government while being physically separated from Kentucky roads and services. Over time, the Bend remained primarily agricultural, with a population that has stayed extremely tiny. And while the Bend is the headline, it's only part of Fulton County's story. The rest of the county developed around two towns, each shaped by a completely different kind of movement. Hickman sits on the Mississippi River and serves as the county seat. The community began early in the 19th century. The site is tied to an 1819 beginning, and the early name was Mills Point. Over time, the settlement became known as Hickman, and it was incorporated before Fulton County was really even created. When the county was formed in 1845, Hickman was already established enough to become the county seat. River towns rose and fell with the river economy, and Hickman grew as a Mississippi River community, with shipping and trade as central features. The bluff location gave it a defensive advantage against the river itself, and the town sits high above the floodplain, and the courthouse presence on the heights became part of the town's identity, actually. One of the best physical symbols of that is the courthouse and the long courthouse steps. The courthouse was built in the early 20th century, and the steps were built to connect the downtown area to the courthouse above. Hickman's layout forces you to understand its geography. The Civic Center is not on the riverbank, it's above it. That Mississippi River identity remains visible today in a way Kentuckians, really most Kentuckians at least, do not experience. The Durena to Hickman ferry continues to cross the Mississippi between Kentucky and Missouri. It connects Hickman, Kentucky to Durena, Missouri, and still functions as a working transportation link. In a county defined by unusual borders and routes, the ferry fits naturally into the modern map. The other incorporated city in Fulton County is Fulton, located on the state line with Tennessee. Fulton's story is tied less to the river commerce and more to rail and cross-border movement. Fulton sits next to South Fulton, Tennessee, and the two developed as a paired border community. Rail made Fulton important, and rail is also the reason Fulton became known for one specific commodity more than any other: bananas. Fulton's banana story is a piece of American logistics history that became really part of its identity. The story centers on the era when bananas arrived through Gulf ports and moved north by rail. Those shipments required cold storage and re-icing along the route, and Fulton became known as a re-icing point tied to local ice facilities and its position on the rail line. Over time, Fulton developed the nickname Banana Capital, and local storytelling took that reputation and turned it into a tradition. The banana story eventually became a festival. The International Banana Festival, which began in the early 1960s, ran for decades and later returned in a modern form. The festival's signature image is the one-ton banana pudding, a spectacle that remains one of the most recognizable community traditions associated with Fulton. As an aside, I just recently finished a book called The Fish That Ate the Whale, about an individual named Sam Zemery, and he was the power broker who essentially made bananas as popular as they were. And New Orleans was certainly the port of choice, and so I always wonder I wonder now if he came to Fulton. Anyway, that was a fun coincidence because I just finished that book. Anyway, this gives Fulton County an interesting contrast. Hickman's identity is anchored in river and geography and county government. Fulton's identity is anchored in rail and border commerce and a single quirky piece of supply chain history that became a cultural symbol. Outside those two cities, Fulton County includes a set of smaller communities that fill in the county's local geography, and several of them trace directly to rail and rural settlement patterns. Casey is one of the more notable unincorporated communities in the county. It is tied to a local merchant name in its origin story, and it also appears in a railroad-adjacent piece of American folklore. The name Casey is often mentioned in connection with the nickname Casey and Casey Jones' story, because Casey Jones spent part of his youth in this area. Crutchfield is another example of an unincorporated place shaped by the rail era. It's documented as having a post office in the late 19th century, and it is often described as having been a small commercial point tied to the Illinois Central Railroad. In counties like Fulton, the rise of a name on the map frequently follows the same pattern: rail access, a post office, a cluster of stores or services, and then consolidation later as travel and commerce change. Other small names in Fulton County tend to reflect location and function. State Line is exactly what it sounds like, a community name that exists because the Kentucky-Tennessee line is not an abstraction in daily life there. Bondurant appears as a rural place name in the county as well, one of several communities that mark older settlement patterns even when the population is small. Modern Fulton County remains small in population, and its economy still reflects the region. Agriculture remains central, and manufacturing and distribution employers matter more in a county of this size than they would in a metro area. In recent years, statewide economic development announcements have highlighted investments and expansions in Fulton County, including manufacturing-related growth. The county also remains connected to larger transportation systems still through its rail legacy and its passenger rail stop in Fulton. Fulton County is also part of a Mississippi River landscape that includes wetlands and wildlife habitat. Public refuge land and river bottom habitat in this region connect into the broader Mississippi flyaway world, and outdoor access points near the river. So, that's Fulton County. What'd I get wrong this time?